In the quiet mists of prehistoric Britain, long before the land was divided by rising seas, a thriving world stretched across what we now call Doggerland. It was a place where entire communities lived, traveled, celebrated, and survived. Yet today, almost everything about them lies hidden beneath the North Sea. But thanks to extraordinary archaeological discoveries at sites like Spar-Archivar, we can now step closer than ever to understanding how these early people truly lived. Imagine a settlement overlooking a glassy lake, where families crafted tools from antler and flint with remarkable skill. Nearby, shelters made from wooden frames and reeds offered warmth against the cold, while hunters moved silently through dense forests, tracking red deer and wild boar. Every artifact uncovered scrapers, spear points, ornaments tells a story of resilience, creativity, and a deep connection to nature. These discoveries do more than fill gaps in history. They revive an entire lost world. They show us that the people of Doggerland were not primitive wanderers. They were builders, artists, and problem solvers who shaped their environment with intention and ingenuity. Their legacy invites us to rethink what early human life really looked like and how sophisticated our ancestors truly were. As we journey through this forgotten landscape and uncover the lives of those who walked across a vanished land, I invite you to join us in exploring more stories that bring history back to life. If you enjoy learning about the mysteries of the ancient world, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others who love history, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next deep dive into the past. Your support helps us continue uncovering the remarkable stories hidden beneath time. As the picture of life in ancient Doggerland begins to sharpen through the discoveries at Spar-Archivar, another remarkable source of insight emerges from a single individual whose remains were uncovered far from the drowned landscape, yet whose ancestry mirrors the communities that once thrived there. This individual, known today as Cheddar Man, lived thousands of years ago in the rugged lands of Mesolithic Britain, and his genetic legacy has become a bridge connecting physical discoveries with the deeper story of the people who once walked across the vast plains now claimed by the North Sea. His DNA offers a rare and vivid window into the appearance and origins of the early hunter-gatherers who shaped this forgotten world. When scientists sequenced his genome, they uncovered traits that challenged long-held assumptions about how Europe's earliest inhabitants looked. Instead of the fair-skinned image often associated with prehistoric northerners, the evidence showed that Cheddar most likely had dark skin, a striking contrast to his piercing blue eyes. This combination, surprising to many, reminds us that the human past cannot be reduced to simple categories, but is a patchwork of adaptations, migrations, and evolving identities. His features were not anomalies but reflections of a population that still carried genetic patterns inherited from groups who lived in Europe long before the spread of farming or major population shifts. By linking Cheddar Man's genetic profile to the broader archaeological evidence, a more coherent and compelling narrative emerges. The people who crafted delicate antler tools at Spar-Archivar, who built shelters along misty lakeshores, and who traveled across the Great Doggerland Plains were part of a wider network of communities stretching across ancient Europe. They hunted similar animals, endured similar climates, and shared cultural expressions shaped by the landscapes they depended on. Cheddar Man's DNA gives these communities a face one marked by deep resilience, by adaptation to colder environments, and by physical characteristics shaped by millennia of shifting habitats and changing seasons. This genetic evidence also enriches our understanding of how these early groups interacted with their surroundings. The dark pigmentation in Cheddar Man's genome suggests a population that still retained traits suited to environments where sunlight was once abundant, or where lifestyles relied heavily on outdoor activity. Long before agricultural diets and sedentary settlements influenced how the body processed sunlight, his blue, meanwhile, point to genetic mutations that had already begun spreading across Europe. weaving together ancestral lines into combinations that were rare but growing increasingly common. In the context of Doggerland, his profile becomes even more meaningful. As the land bridge connected what is now Britain to the continent, people moved freely across rivers, forests, and marshlands, bringing with them stories, skills, and genes that mingled with those of neighboring groups. The inhabitants of this lost land were not isolated tribes but part of a dynamic and adaptable population whose lives were shaped by seasonal migrations, shifting coastlines, and the gradual rise of the seas. Cheddar Man stands as a representative of this broader world, a reminder that the individuals behind the tools, ornaments, and hunting camps were far more diverse and complex than the fragments left behind in the soil might first suggest. When we place his genetic profile beside the discoveries at Spar-Archivar, the story becomes not just one of artifacts and landscapes, but one of people. People with families, traditions, and appearances that carried the imprint of ancient ancestry. People who shared a land that has since vanished beneath the waves. Through this combination of archaeology and genetics, the early communities of Doggerland become more than distant figures in prehistory. They become individuals whose lives, choices, and identities helped shape the foundations of human history in Northern Europe. As we continue to piece together the lives of Doggerland's inhabitants, a vivid image emerges of a society in constant motion, intimately attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. The combination of evidence from Spar-Archivar and the genetic insights provided by Cheddar Man reveals not a static existence but one defined by movement, adaptation, and resourcefulness. These early communities did not settle in one place for convenience alone. They followed the cycles of the land, the migrations of animals, and the seasonal changes that dictated the abundance of food and materials. Their survival depended on understanding patterns that modern observers can only begin to imagine. A deep knowledge encoded in generations of experience and passed through subtle rituals, oral traditions, and practical teachings. Archaeological finds suggest that hunting was not merely an activity but a highly coordinated and strategic endeavor, with families and small groups tracking red deer, aurochs, and wild boar across dense forests and open plains, timing their movements to match the seasons when prey was most vulnerable. Spears, barbed points, and antler tools discovered at Spar-Archivar are evidence of a sophisticated understanding of animal behavior, terrain, and the physics of hunting, demonstrating that success in this environment required far more than strength or chance. Equally vital was the mastery of fishing techniques, for rivers and lakes offered abundant protein and resources essential for survival, and the presence of fish traps, net weights, and other tools points to ingenuity in exploiting these water sources year-round. But these people were not bound solely to the immediate landscape. Seasonal migration allowed them to take advantage of different ecological zones, moving between woodland, marsh, and riverine areas to harvest plants, hunt game, and gather materials such as flint, reeds, and animal hides. This constant movement cultivated a remarkable flexibility, an ability to adapt quickly to shifting conditions and to recognize the subtle signs in weather, water levels, and animal patterns. It was a lifestyle that required observation, patience, and foresight, and it fostered an intimate relationship with the environment, as every choice when to move, where to settle, which tools to craft carried direct consequences for survival. This mobility also shaped social structures and cultural practices. The need for cooperation in hunting parties, the coordination required to set traps or construct temporary shelters, and the knowledge sharing necessary for passing on seasonal strategies all suggest a complex network of relationships and communal responsibility. Life in Doggerland demanded that individuals be attuned not only to the landscape but also to one another, fostering a sense of interdependence that strengthened resilience. At the same time, The richness of the environment offered opportunities for creativity, as the availability of diverse resources allowed the production of ornaments, tools, and symbolic objects that went beyond mere utility, reflecting aesthetic and spiritual dimensions of daily life. Through this lens, the lives of these early people take on an almost cinematic quality. Families moving along the edges of misty lakes, children learning to recognize edible plants and animal tracks, artisans shaping flint and antler into precise implements, hunters coordinating across forest glades to bring down game, and fishers working the currents with patience and skill. Each movement, each action, was a deliberate response to the demands of the land, a testament to human adaptability and ingenuity. It is in these rhythms of mobility, subsistence, and strategy that the essence of Doggerland's communities comes alive, a dynamic existence that harmonized survival, skill, and an intuitive understanding of the world around them, a world that would soon vanish beneath the rising waters, leaving only traces that modern science continues to uncover. As the story of Doggerland unfolds through the landscapes of Spar-Archivar and the genetic echoes of Cheddar Man, another layer of their existence emerges, one that transcends mere survival and ventures into the realm of culture, creativity, and symbolic expression. The material remains left behind by these early communities offer glimpses into minds capable of imagination, reflection, and intentionality, revealing that their lives were not dictated solely by hunger or necessity, but were enriched by the pursuit of meaning and identity. Every crafted tool, delicate ornament, and trace of ritual behavior forms a window into a society that valued both practicality and artistry, blending the utilitarian with the symbolic in ways that continue to captivate modern observers. Flint blades and antler points demonstrate more than technical skill. They reflect a deep understanding of materials, physics, and human ergonomics, honed over years of trial, error, and refinement. Each item was designed with precision, often tailored to a specific task, whether for hunting, processing food, or constructing shelters. Yet the care with which they were made hints at an appreciation for form as well as function. Beyond the implements of daily life, ornaments fashioned from bone, shell, and stone suggest an aesthetic sensibility and a desire to express individuality or group identity. Beads, pendants, and engraved objects likely played a role in social signaling, marking status, achievements, or affiliations, and they speak to a culture in which beauty and meaning were inseparable from utility. Equally compelling are the traces of ritualized behavior preserved in the archaeological record. Wooden stakes arranged in patterns, deposits of red ochre, and deliberate placement of objects within settlements suggest practices that went beyond the material, hinting at spiritual or symbolic dimensions of existence. These behaviors point to an awareness of cycles, transitions, and connections, an early human recognition that life was more than immediate needs and that actions could carry meaning for the individual, the group, and possibly even the unseen forces they sought to influence. Such practices reveal an intellectual depth and cultural sophistication that resonates across millennia, inviting us to imagine communities not only surviving but also reflecting on the world, their place in it, and their relationships with each other. In combination with the mobility, resourcefulness, and strategic acumen already visible in hunting and migration patterns, these cultural markers transform our understanding of Doggerland's inhabitants from mere survivors to innovators, artists, and thinkers. They crafted a world in which function and expression coexisted, where each action, whether building a shelter or shaping a pendant, was part of a continuum connecting the practical with the profound. The artifacts tell stories of learning and teaching, of repetition and refinement, and of the human desire to leave a mark on the world beyond the immediacy of sustenance. Imagining a day in such a settlement, one can see children watching elders carve tools, practicing motions that combine dexterity with precision, artisans meticulously drilling shells or smoothing edges to create personal adornments, hunters preparing for seasonal expeditions, aware that the same environment provides both sustenance and inspiration, and perhaps gatherings where objects are placed with deliberate intent, rituals enacted to honor cycles of life, success in hunting, or connections to ancestors. Each object and behavior is a thread in a larger tapestry, illustrating a society where knowledge, creativity, and social cohesion were inseparable. By examining these material remains alongside the evidence of mobility, environmental adaptation, and genetic heritage, the story of Doggerland comes alive not merely as a prehistoric chapter, but as a human narrative rich in intelligence, imagination, and foresight. Their culture was not accidental. It was shaped through intentional action, through repeated practice, and through a desire to understand and engage with the world in meaningful ways. These early communities left behind more than tools and ornaments. They left clues to a mindset that valued ingenuity, social connection, and the quiet but profound act of embedding meaning into everyday life, a legacy that continues to inspire our understanding of human potential across time. As the stories of Doggerland as people take shape through the artifacts of Spar-Archivar, the genetic legacy of Cheddar Man, and the traces of their culture, the land they inhabited begins to emerge with equal clarity, revealing a world both expansive and intimately connected to its inhabitants. Environmental evidence from sediment cores, pollen analysis, and submerged river channels paints a picture of a landscape that was far more than an empty wilderness. It was a living, breathing terrain that shaped and was shaped by the communities who called it home. Stretching across what is now the North Sea, Doggerland was once a vast land bridge, a corridor of marshes, dense forests, winding rivers, and open plains that connected Britain to continental Europe, forming a mosaic of ecological zones teeming with life and resources. Walking across this land would have been like moving through a continuously shifting tapestry. Marshes and wetlands provided fertile grounds for edible plants and attracted migratory birds, while dense forests offered both game and materials for shelter and tools. Rivers snaked through valleys, bringing water, fish, and transportation routes that early communities learned to navigate with skill and foresight. Seasonal changes transformed the environment dramatically, as floodplains swelled in the spring and forests thickened in summer, demanding constant awareness and adaptability from those who depended on it. The land itself was both a provider and a teacher, offering sustenance but also imposing lessons in patience, observation, and the consequences of misjudging nature's rhythms. Environmental reconstructions also reveal how intimately intertwined these early humans were with the ecosystems they inhabited. They were keen observers of animal migrations, plant cycles, and weather patterns, understanding not only where to find food but also how to use materials for tools, clothing, and shelter. The diversity of habitats within Doggerland allowed them to exploit multiple resources across seasons, moving strategically between riverside camps, forested hunting grounds, and marshes rich in reeds and edible roots. This mobility and environmental literacy were critical for survival, yet they also shaped social organization, communication, and even cultural practices. As communities learned to share knowledge about landscapes and resources that could make the difference between prosperity and scarcity. Moreover, the land itself held a rhythm that influenced human behavior and creativity. The interplay of water and land created natural corridors, while open plains allowed for tracking game over long distances, and dense forests required stealth and strategy. Settlements were placed with awareness of elevation, drainage, and proximity to resources, reflecting an understanding of both immediate needs and long-term sustainability. This intimate dialogue between people and environment is evident not only in the tools and artifacts they left behind, but also in the subtle imprints of activity preserved in peat bogs, sediment layers, and submerged forests now hidden beneath the waves. By examining Doggerland's landscape alongside the evidence of mobility, subsistence, and cultural expression, a vivid and coherent story emerges. The people who inhabited this land were not passive occupants. They were active participants in a dynamic ecosystem, constantly reading its signals, responding to its challenges, and shaping their behaviors to align with its patterns. Their lives, while framed by the necessities of survival, were also defined by observation, innovation, and an intimate connection to the land that sustained them. Each forested glade, each river bend, each marshy expanse played a role in their stories, influencing hunting strategies, seasonal movements, and even the symbolic and ritualistic dimensions of their culture. In this way, the vanished landscape of Doggerland is not merely a backdrop for human activity, but an active participant in history, shaping the trajectories of families, communities, and generations. It reminds us that understanding ancient people requires understanding the world they navigated, the challenges they faced, the resources they relied upon, and the lessons they learned from the land itself. Through these environmental reconstructions, Doggerland emerges as a vivid, living place, a once thriving homeland whose contours, waterways, and forests framed the extraordinary lives of those who adapted, thrived, and left a legacy that reaches us across thousands of years, bringing together the threads of archaeology, genetics, and environmental reconstruction. We can now begin to piece together a portrait of the people who once lived in Doggerland, long before the rising seas swallowed their homeland. Through the careful excavation of sites like Spar-Archivar, we see not only the tools they crafted and the shelters they built, but also the rhythms of daily life, how they hunted, fished, and migrated with the seasons, how they observed and adapted to a landscape that demanded both skill and ingenuity. The discoveries of ornaments, engraved objects, and evidence of ritualized behavior reveal a culture that valued creativity, identity, and social cohesion, demonstrating that these early communities were far more sophisticated than we might have imagined. Complementing the archaeological record, the genetic analysis of Cheddar Man offers a remarkable window into the physical identity of these ancient inhabitants. His dark skin, blue eyes, and genetic ties to early European hunter-gatherers remind us that the people of Doggerland were diverse, adaptive, and uniquely equipped to thrive in their environment. Genetics, combined with material evidence, allows us to trace their connections across regions, showing how knowledge, skills, and even traits spread among populations, linking families and communities across what was once a vast, interconnected land. When we merge these insights with the reconstruction of Doggerland's environment, a patchwork of marshes, forests, rivers, and open plains, the full story becomes clear. The landscape shaped their lives, offering both challenges and opportunities, while their mobility and resourcefulness allowed them to not only survive but flourish. They were observers, innovators, and strategists, whose intimate understanding of the land informed every decision, from where to hunt and settle to how to create objects that carried cultural and symbolic significance. Their adaptability in the face of environmental change foreshadows the resilience we admire in human communities throughout history. In the end, Doggerland is more than a vanished land. It is a testament to human ingenuity, perseverance, and connection to the world around us. These early people remind us that identity is forged through a combination of biology, culture, and environment, and that survival is as much about understanding and adapting as it is about strength or skill. They teach us that even in the face of overwhelming change, communities can leave enduring legacies, lessons written not just in artifacts or dna, but in the stories and principles we reconstruct today. Thank you for joining this journey into the lost world of Doggerland and the lives of its remarkable inhabitants. If this exploration of ancient history inspired you, do not forget to like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel so you can continue uncovering more stories from our shared human past. Your support helps us keep these discoveries alive and brings history to life in ways that are both engaging and meaningful. Together, we can continue to explore the extraordinary resilience,